The emergency session of Earth's Unified Command took place in a bunker so deep beneath the surface that even a nuclear strike could not touch it. Around the circular table sat 15 people who represented every branch of Earth's military. Admiral Daewon Kim stood at the head of the table, his uniform perfectly pressed despite the late hour. On the main display behind him, images of the destroyed colony still smoldered. "New Sol is gone," he said bluntly. 50,000 civilians murdered to make a point. The Vrexians believe we will surrender now. They believe we have no choice. He paused, letting his words sink in. They are wrong. He activated the display, and the images of destruction were replaced by ship specifications, fleet positions, and tactical data. For 30 years we have prepared for this moment. We hoped it would never come. But we are not unprepared. Major Taeyang Song spoke up from his position at the table. He was 38 years old, built like a weapon himself with scars on his hands that told stories of special forces operations that officially never happened. "Sir, my teams are ready. Give the order and we can be in Vrexian space within 72 hours. "Patience, Major," Daewon said. "First, we need to understand what we are working with." He gestured to the civilian section of the table. "Dr. Choi, please present your projects." Dr. Sungmin Choi stood, barely able to contain his excitement. He had spent 20 years developing weapons that Earth was never supposed to need. The galaxy uses energy shields and plasma weapons. They fight wars the way they have fought them for thousands of years. We chose a different path. The display showed a sleek warship unlike anything in any other species' fleet. This is a Silence-class destroyer. No energy shields because they are too easy to detect and drain too much power. Instead, we use layered armor made from carbon composites and titanium alloys. Our weapons are not plasma or lasers. They are railguns that fire solid projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. Energy shields do not stop mass. They pass right through. He changed the display to show smaller craft. These are silence breaker drones. Fully automated hunter-killers with advanced AI. They operate in swarms, coordinating their attacks faster than any organic mind can react. We have 8,000 of them ready for deployment. Another image appeared, this time of satellites in orbit. Kinetic bombardment platforms. Simple but effective. Drop a tungsten rod from orbit with enough velocity, and it hits with the force of a tactical nuclear weapon. No radiation, no fallout, just pure kinetic energy. Captain Hana Park leaned forward, studying the displays with intense focus. "Doctor, these ships and weapons, how many are ready for actual combat?" 200 destroyers fully operational, 500 more in various stages of completion, 15,000 fighter craft, the drones I mentioned, and enough kinetic platforms to turn any planet into a crater field. Sungmin smiled grimly. "We have been busy." "Where?" asked General Hyunwoo Nam, who commanded Earth's ground forces. "Where have you been building all this without anyone noticing?" Daewon took over the presentation. "Mars's underground caverns house our primary shipyards. The asteroid belt contains 17 hidden manufacturing facilities. We have construction sites in deep space where no trade routes go, where no alien ships ever travel. It took 30 years and the combined efforts of thousands of people who understood what was at stake. And the cost?" Premier Insu Han had joined the meeting remotely, his face appearing on a screen. "The financial cost of all this?" "Significant," Daewon admitted. "But spread across 3 decades and hidden in legitimate budgets, it was manageable. The real cost was keeping the secret. We had to compartmentalize everything. Most of the workers did not know they were building warships. They thought they were constructing mining equipment or research vessels." Premier Insu looked at the ship designs with troubled eyes. "We swore after the Third War that humanity would be better, that we would not repeat the mistakes that almost destroyed us." "Premier, with respect," Hana said carefully. "The Third War almost destroyed us because we turned our weapons on each other. We fought ourselves. This is different. This is about survival against a threat that sees us as nothing more than inconvenient insects." Daewon nodded. "We did not build these weapons to conquer. We built them to defend. The Vrexians have made their choice. They have murdered our people. Now we must make ours." The Premier was quiet for a long moment. "Admiral, what are you proposing?" "A demonstration," Daewon said. "We hit them hard, fast, and without warning. We show the galaxy that Earth's silence was never weakness. It was restraint. And they have pushed us past the point where restraint is possible." He pulled up a star chart showing Vrexian space. Targus 4. It is a border system with significant military presence. 500 ships according to our intelligence. We take the first strike fleet, all 200 ships, and we remove Targus 4 as a threat. 200 against 500? General Hyunwoo looks skeptical. Those are not good odds, even with superior weapons. They are not expecting us, Major Taeyang said. They think we are weak. That gives us an advantage worth more than numbers. Sungmin added, Our ships are faster, our weapons have longer range, and our AI coordination is beyond anything they have encountered. In simulations, we win that fight 80% of the time with minimal losses. Simulations are not reality, Premier Insu said quietly. People will die. Human people. Are we ready for that? Daewon met his gaze through the screen. New Soul already died. We are ready to make sure they did not die for nothing. The Premier closed his eyes. Captain Park, the first strike fleet is yours to command. Major Song, take your people behind enemy lines. Find out everything you can about their fleet positions, their supply lines, their weaknesses. Dr. Choi, I want every weapon system checked and rechecked. Admiral Kim, coordinate everything. He opened his eyes and they were hard. Show them what happens when you mistake patience for fear. The meeting ended and people dispersed to their assigned tasks. Hana found herself walking with Daewon through the bunker's corridors. Sir, can I ask you something? Of course, Captain. Did you ever think this day would actually come? Or did you hope we would never need any of this? Daewon stopped walking and turned to face her. I hoped every single day that we would never need it. I prayed that humanity's peaceful reputation would protect us, that other species would see our restraint as strength rather than weakness. But I also knew that the universe has predators, and predators respect only one thing. Strength, Hana finished. No, Daewon said. The willingness to use it. Strength without will is meaningless. The Vrexians are about to learn that we have both. In another part of the facility, Major Taeyang briefed his Special Forces team. There were 20 of them, hand-picked from Earth's elite military units. They wore black combat suits designed for zero-gravity operations, and each carried weapons that could function in any environment. Our mission is intelligence gathering, Taeyang said. We insert into Vrexian space quietly. We observe their fleet movements, their supply depots, their communication networks. We do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Stealth is our primary weapon. One of his team members, Lieutenant Bo Ra-shin, raised her hand. Sir, if we are discovered? Then we adapt, Taeyang said simply. We are human. Adaptation is what we do best. He looked at each of them in turn. The main fleet will engage the enemy in 72 hours. Everything we learn between now and then could save human lives. Do not take unnecessary risks, but do not hesitate when action is required. Understood? Yes, sir, they replied in unison. Captain Hana stood on the bridge of the ESS Horizon, her flagship. Around her, the bridge crew worked efficiently, preparing for departure. These were people she had trained with, served with, trusted with her life. Now she was about to lead them into actual combat against an enemy that believed humans were no threat at all. Status report, she said. Commander Yoon Seo-kang, her tactical officer, checked his displays. All systems operational. Weapons charged and ready. The rest of the first strike fleet is in formation and awaiting your orders, Captain. Hana took a deep breath. Somewhere out in Vrexian space, Major Taeyang and his team were already moving into position. Somewhere on Earth, families were mourning the loss of New Soul. Somewhere in the galaxy, species were laughing at humanity's weakness. All of that was about to change. Take us out, she ordered. Set course for Targus 4, maximum stealth protocols, and send a message to the fleet. Silence is over. Time to make some noise. The ships began to move, sliding out of their hidden bases like sharks emerging from dark water. 200 warships that should not exist, crewed by people the galaxy had dismissed as harmless. They moved through space toward a destiny that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. In the command center, Admiral Daewon watched them go on his displays. Premier Insu Han's image appeared on his screen. Admiral, I need to know. Can we win this? Daewon did not hesitate. Yes, Premier. We can win. The question is not whether we can, but what we become in the process. That is the real challenge facing us. The Premier nodded slowly. Then let us hope we remain human even as we show them what humans can do. The Targus 4 system sat on the edge of Vrexian space like a guard dog watching for threats. Its star burned orange in the void, and around it orbited 6 planets, 3 of them used as military bases. War Chief Kratek commanded the defense fleet from his flagship. The fist of empire. He was old for a Vrexian, his scales dulled by age but his mind still sharp with decades of conquest. War Chief, his sensor officer called out. We are detecting unusual readings at the system's edge. Multiple contacts emerging from dark space. Kratek moved to the display, his clawed feet clicking on the metal deck. Identification? Still processing, but preliminary analysis suggests human vessels. Approximately 200 ships. Kratek laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. The cowards finally sent their toys to negotiate. How many ships do we have in system? 496, War Chief. All combat ready. Excellent. Open a channel to the human fleet. Let us hear them beg for mercy. But no channel opened. The human ships moved into formation with mechanical precision, spreading out in patterns that Kratek's tactical computer did not recognize. They maintained complete communication silence. Not a single transmission, not even basic identification signals. This is unusual, his tactical officer said. Standard protocol requires them to announce their intentions. They are probably too frightened to speak, Kratek said. Prepare the fleet to intercept. Let us show them why the Vrexian Dominion is feared across the galaxy. Aboard the ESS Horizon, Captain Hannah Park watched the Vrexian fleet begin to move. Her hands were steady on the armrests of her command chair, but her heart hammered in her chest. This was it, the moment when theory became practice, when simulations became deadly reality. Vrexian fleet is moving to intercept, Commander Yun Seo Kang reported. They are maintaining standard battle formation. Energy shields are active. Distance to weapons range? 3 minutes at current speeds. Hana activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Horizon. Maintain silence. No transmissions of any kind. Let them wonder what we are doing. She switched to tactical. Commander Kang, target assignment?
AI has distributed targets across all vessels.
Each ship knows its primary and secondary targets. Drone swarms are ready for deployment. Good. Hana watched the range counter tick down. 2 minutes. The Vrexian fleet looked massive on her displays, more than twice their numbers. She thought about the people of New Seoul, burning in the atmosphere as their world died. She thought about Ambassador Jiwoo standing alone in that council chamber while aliens laughed. 1 minute. All ships, she said quietly. Weapons free. Show them the storm. The first strike fleet opened fire. Railgun rounds shot through space faster than Vrexian sensors could track. The projectiles carried no energy signature, no heat bloom, nothing to warn of their approach except the physics of mass and motion. They passed through Vrexian energy shields like they were not there, because the shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not solid matter. The first salvo struck 20 Vrexian ships simultaneously. Hulls ruptured. Atmosphere vented into space. Internal explosions tore through ship systems. In the span of 5 seconds, the Vrexian fleet lost 4% of its strength. What was that? Kratek roared at his sensor officer. What hit us? Unknown, War Chief. Our shields did not register the attack. Whatever they fired, it passed through as if the shields were not active. The second salvo followed immediately. Human ships coordinated through AI systems that communicated faster than organic minds could comprehend. Each ship adjusted its targeting based on the results of the previous shots. No wasted fire, no missed opportunities, pure efficiency. More Vrexian ships died. The neat battle formation began to break apart as captains tried to evade attacks they could barely see coming. Return fire, Kratek ordered. All ships engage the human fleet. The Vrexian ships unleashed their plasma cannons, the weapons that had conquered dozens of species across centuries of expansion. Bright streams of superheated matter crossed the void, beautiful and deadly. They splashed harmlessly against the human ship's armor. The carbon composite and titanium layers absorbed the energy, distributed the heat, and held firm, some scoring, some damage to external systems, but no critical hits. The human ships had been designed specifically to counter the weapons the galaxy used. War Chief, the tactical officer's voice shook. They are not using energy shields. Their armor is absorbing our plasma fire, then increase power, maximum intensity on all weapons. But increasing power did not help. The humans had done their research. They had studied Vrexian tactics for decades, had analyzed every battle record they could find, had built their ships to counter everything the Vrexians could throw at them. The third salvo killed 30 ships. The human fleet moved closer, their formation fluid and adaptive. Kratek watched his numerical advantage evaporate with each passing minute. "Deploy drones," Hana ordered. "Full swarm tactics." From each human ship, dozens of small craft launched. The silence breaker drones moved through space like a swarm of mechanical insects, their AI minds linked in a network that processed battlefield data millions of times per second. They ignored the larger Vrexian ships and went after the small craft, the fighters and bombers that served as the fleet's close defense. The drones were too small to target effectively, too fast to track manually, and too numerous to stop. They tore through the Vrexian fighter screen like a predator through prey. Explosions blossomed across the battlefield as hundreds of small craft died. "This is impossible," Kratek whispered, watching his displays fill with damage reports. "They are primitives. They have no military tradition. They should not fight like this." But they did fight like this, and they were winning. The human ships showed no hesitation, no mercy, no honor-bound behavior that limited other species' combat tactics. They fought with cold efficiency, with calculated ruthlessness, with the precision of machines despite having organic crews. Major Tai Yang Song watched the battle from his stealth ship, hidden in the system's asteroid belt. His mission was intelligence gathering, but the fight was providing more data than a month of surveillance could have. He recorded everything, analyzed everything, sent compressed data bursts back to Earth through quantum-encrypted channels. "Sir," Lieutenant Bora Shin said from the sensor station, "the Vrexian supply depot on the fourth moon is minimally guarded. Everyone is focused on the main battle." Tai Yang considered this. His orders were to observe, not to engage. But a supply depot destroyed now would hurt the Vrexians' ability to respond to the fleet. And his team was here, ready, capable. Prep for insertion, he decided. "We take that depot offline. Quick and quiet." The Special Forces team moved through space in a small assault craft designed to avoid detection. They landed on the moon's dark side and approached the depot on foot, their suits' camouflage adapting to the rocky terrain. The Vrexian guards were watching the sky where the battle raged in silent fury. They never saw the humans until it was too late. Tai Yang's team moved through the depot like ghosts, placing charges on fuel tanks, ammunition stores, and reactor cores. They extracted data from the computers, information about fleet movements, supply lines, strategic plans. In 15 minutes, they had everything they needed. "Move out," Tai Yang ordered. "Detonation in 3 minutes." They were back in their ship when the depot exploded, a massive fireball that briefly created a second sun in the Targus 4 system. The explosion was visible from the main battle, and Kratek watched another piece of his infrastructure destroyed by these impossible humans. The Battle of Targus 4 lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the Vrexian fleet was scattered wreckage floating in the void, 487 ships destroyed. Only 9 escaped, including Kratek's damaged flagship. The human fleet had lost 15 ships with another 30 damaged but repairable. Captain Hana stood on her bridge, looking at the tactical display showing the aftermath. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. They had done it. They had won. But the cost was still real. 15 ships meant thousands of human lives lost. She felt the weight of each one. "Captain," Commander Yun Seo said softly, "Admiral Daewon is requesting communication." Daewon's face appeared on her screen. "Well done, Captain Park. Targus 4 is secure." "At the cost of good people, sir." "Yes," Daewon agreed. "And we will honor them. But because of their sacrifice, the rest of humanity is safer. The Vrexians underestimated us. They will not make that mistake again." Across Vrexian space on dozens of military channels, emergency transmissions began to fly. Images of the battle, sensor data, desperate warnings. The human fleet was not what they seemed. Earth was not defenseless. The silent species had teeth, and they had just bitten hard. On his damaged flagship, War Chief Kratek reviewed the battle recordings over and over, trying to understand what had happened. His pride had cost him nearly 500 ships. His assumptions about human weakness had led to disaster. "Send a message to the Empress," he said, his voice defeated. "Tell her the humans have warships. Real warships. Tell her they fight like nothing we have ever encountered. They fight like machines, like death itself has learned to build starships." The message reached the Vrexian homeworld, and Empress Shakrix listened with growing fury and fear. The war room at Earth's Unified Command never slept anymore. Admiral Daewon Kim stood before a massive holographic display showing the Vrexian Empire spread across 100 star systems. Red markers indicated military targets. Blue markers showed human fleet positions. Yellow markers were Major Tae Yang's Special Forces teams, now numbering 15 units scattered throughout enemy territory. Status report, Daewon said to the assembled officers. General Hyun-woo Nam spoke first. The Second Fleet under Fleet Commander Bora Shin is in position around the Vrexian homeworld. They have not engaged yet, but the blockade is complete. Nothing gets in or out. The Third and Fourth Fleets are hitting targets simultaneously across 6 Vrexian systems, Captain Hana Park added. She had returned from Targus 4 to help coordinate the wider campaign. Estimated time to complete objectives is 36 hours. Dr. Sung-min Choi looked tired but satisfied. Weapons production has increased by 40%. We have enough munitions to sustain operations for 8 months at current consumption rates. The shipyards are working overtime to replace our losses and build additional vessels. Daewon nodded, studying the strategic situation. After Targus 4, he had given the Vrexians one chance to surrender. They had refused. Empress Shakrix had called it a lucky victory and promised to crush humanity. So now Earth was showing them what a sustained military campaign looked like. Major Song, what is your team reporting? Taeyang's face appeared on a screen transmitted from deep inside Vrexian space. Sir, we have secured intelligence on their defense grid, supply routes, and communication networks. We have also discovered something else. He paused, and his expression was grim. Prison camps. Dozens of them. Species the Vrexians conquered and enslaved. The conditions are terrible. The room fell silent. Daewon felt anger rise in his chest, cold and controlled. Evidence? Extensive documentation, video recordings, survivor testimonies. Sir, some of these camps have existed for 200 years. Entire generations born into slavery. Send everything to Ambassador Jiwoo at Apex Prime, Daewon ordered. The galaxy needs to see what they have been ignoring while they laughed at us. On Apex Prime Station, Ambassador Jiwoo Lee prepared to enter the council chamber. She wore her uniform as always, but this time she carried a data crystal containing the evidence that Major Tae Yang had gathered. This time she would not stand alone in humiliation. This time she would speak and the galaxy would listen. The chamber filled as usual, representatives from hundreds of species taking their places. But the atmosphere was different now. Everyone had seen the footage from Targus 4. The Vrexian delegate was notably absent, and his seat stood empty like a missing tooth. The Nathori chairman's voice resonated through the space. Ambassador Lee of Earth, you have requested an emergency session. The council recognizes you. Jiwoo stepped forward to her platform, which suddenly did not feel so small anymore. Thank you, Chairman. The Vrexian Empire demanded Earth surrender 3 colony worlds. We refused. They responded by destroying New Sol, murdering 50,000 civilians. We consider that an act of war. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Kelthrian representative clicked forward. The council heard your complaint before. We ruled that territorial disputes must be resolved between the involved parties. And we have resolved it, Jiwoo said calmly. The Vrexian fleet at Targus 4 no longer exists. 6 other systems are currently under assault by human forces. The Vrexian homeworld is blockaded, but I am not here to discuss our military operations. She activated the data crystal. Holographic images filled the chamber. Prison camps, slaves working in terrible conditions, children born knowing nothing but captivity, species driven to near extinction, 2 centuries of systematic cruelty and oppression. This is what the Vrexian Dominion has been doing while you all sat here and did nothing, Jiwoo said, her voice sharp with accusation. You mocked Earth's silence, called us weak, dismissed us as having nothing to contribute. Meanwhile, we were gathering evidence of crimes that should have been stopped decades ago. The images continued to play. Some representatives looked away. Others watched in horror. The chairman spoke, his voice subdued. These are serious accusations. They are not accusations. They are facts. We have coordinates for every camp. We have testimonies from survivors. We have Vrexian military records documenting their own atrocities. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. The Kelthrian representative tried to salvage something. Perhaps the council can mediate, negotiate a peace settlement that addresses these concerns. No, Jiwoo said flatly. You had 50 years to address these concerns. You did nothing. You were too busy laughing at the species that did not have a military fleet. Well, we have a fleet now and we will use it. Not for conquest, not for territory, but for justice. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as she could. You mocked our silence. You called it weakness. We call it restraint. And you mistook patience for fear. That mistake has cost the Vrexians most of their fleet. It will cost them their empire. And it should cost every species in this chamber a long, hard look at what kind of galaxy you have been building. The session dissolved into chaos. Some species demanded the Council condemn Earth's military actions. Others called for an investigation into the Vrexian camps. Still others tried to offer mediation, peace proposals, anything to de-escalate the situation. Jiwoo ignored them all and walked out of the chamber with her head high. In the Third Fleet, Captain Yansu Park commanded a strike group targeting Vrexian supply lines. The ships moved through enemy space like predators, hitting logistics hubs and withdrawing before reinforcements could arrive. It was not glorious combat like Targus 4. It was methodical destruction of the enemy's ability to wage war. Another convoy destroyed, her tactical officer reported. That makes 12 this week. Good, Yansu said. The Vrexians are learning that winning battles means nothing if your ships have no fuel and your soldiers have no food. She had studied Earth's ancient military history, and she understood that modern war was as much about logistics as combat. The Fourth Fleet under Commander Jin Ho Yun took a different approach. They freed the prison camps that Major Taeyang had discovered. Each liberation operation was carefully planned to minimize casualties among the prisoners. The freed slaves told stories of Vrexian cruelty that made even hardened soldiers sick. We found another camp on the moon of Hector 5, Jinho reported to Admiral Day 1. 4,000 prisoners from 3 different species. The conditions are worse than anything we have seen. How do we handle this? Free them, Day 1 said simply. Give them medical care, food, and the choice of where they want to go. And make sure every liberation is recorded and sent to the Galactic Council. Let them see what their inaction allowed to continue. Meanwhile, Fleet Commander Bora Shin maintained the blockade around the Vrexian homeworld. Her ships formed an unbreakable net around the planet, and any vessel that tried to leave was turned back. No shots fired yet, but the threat was clear. The Empress was trapped in her own capital. Inside the Imperial Palace, Empress Shakrix raged at her advisors. How did this happen? They are primitives. They should not have weapons that can defeat our fleets. Her chief military advisor, General Thax, looked exhausted. Empress, they have been preparing for decades while we assumed they were weak. Our intelligence failed us. Our assumptions failed us. They fight with tactics we have never encountered, and weapons designed specifically to counter our defenses. Then adapt, change our tactics, build new weapons. That takes time. Time we do not have. Our supply lines are cut. Our fleets are scattered. Our subject species are rebelling because the humans are freeing them and showing them that resistance is possible. Shakrix felt her empire crumbling around her. 2 centuries of conquest, generations of dominance, all threatened by a species that 50 years ago barely understood how to travel between stars. The Council, she said desperately. Demand they intervene. Tell them the humans are committing war crimes. Yeah, we tried, Empress. Ambassador Lee showed them the prison camps. She showed them everything we have done. The Council is more likely to condemn us than the humans. In the palace's lower levels, Major Taeyang and his team moved through ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels. Getting onto the homeworld had been challenging but not impossible. His orders were clear. Capture Empress Shakrix alive. Security checkpoint ahead. Lieutenant Bora Shin whispered into her communicator. 4 guards, heavily armed. Go around, Taeyang decided. We are not here to fight. We are here to complete the mission. They bypassed the guards using routes that did not officially exist. The palace schematics they had stolen were invaluable. After 3 hours of careful movement, they reached the Imperial quarters. The capture was anticlimactic. Shakrix was alone in her chambers, surrounded by luxury while her empire burned. She tried to fight when the humans breached the door, but she was no match for trained special forces operators. Within seconds, she was restrained and sedated. Package secured, Taeyang reported. Extracting now. The extraction was harder than the infiltration. Alarms blared throughout the palace. Guards rushed to protect their Empress, but she was already gone. The trial of Empress Shakrix took place on Apex Prime Station, in a specially constructed court that could accommodate representatives from every species that wished to attend. The room was vast with seating for thousands, and every seat was filled. Species that had suffered under Vrexian rule came to see justice. Species that had done nothing while the suffering continued came to witness their own failure. Shakrix stood in a containment field, her scales dull with defeat. She had ruled an empire, commanded fleets, held the power of life and death over billions. Now she stood alone, facing judgment from the very species she had dismissed as weak. Ambassador Ji-Woo Lee served as the primary prosecutor, not because she wanted vengeance, but because Premier In-Soo Han had asked her to represent humanity's case. She stood before the court with documents, recordings, and testimonies from thousands of victims. The evidence shows 200 years of systematic oppression, Ji-Woo said, her voice clear and steady. 12 species reduced to slavery, thousands of prison camps, millions of lives destroyed, and all of it was known. The Galactic Council received reports. Individual species filed complaints, but nothing was done because the Vrexian military was too strong to challenge. She turned to face the assembled delegates, until Earth challenged them, not because we wanted war, but because we understood that peace without justice is just another form of oppression. We were mocked for our silence, dismissed for our lack of military power, but we used that time to prepare, to build, to become strong enough to do what the rest of the galaxy would not. The trial lasted 3 days. Witness after witness described Vrexian atrocities. Former soldiers testified about orders they had followed. Freed slaves showed scars from decades of abuse. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. The verdict was unanimous. Shakrix was found guilty of crimes against sentient life on a scale that horrified even hardened observers. The sentence was life imprisonment, not execution. As Admiral Daewon had said, humanity would not become monsters to defeat monsters. But the trial was only the beginning. The real question facing the galaxy was what would replace the old order. The Galactic Council was discredited, its failure to act exposed for all to see. New leadership was needed, and species looked to Earth for guidance. Premier In-Soo Han addressed the remnants of the council in a special session broadcast across known space. He stood where Ambassador Ji-Woo had once stood alone, but now she stood beside him, along with representatives from the species Earth had freed. The Galactic Council has failed, In-Soo said bluntly, not because of malice, but because it was designed to maintain the status quo rather than pursue justice. It allowed the strong to prey on the weak as long as the strong were strong enough to avoid consequences. That era ends today. He presented a new proposal, one that Earth's government had spent weeks developing with input from dozens of species. We propose the Concord of Equals, a new alliance based not on military power, but on mutual defense and shared values. Any species can join, regardless of size or strength. But membership requires commitment to basic principles. No slavery, no conquest, no oppression of other sentient beings. The proposal included enforcement mechanisms that the old council had lacked. A combined military force drawn from all member species, inspectors with the authority to investigate complaints, and most importantly, the willingness to act when principles were violated. Earth will contribute the core of this defense force, In-Soo continued, not to dominate but to protect. We learned from our own history that peace requires vigilance. We offer our strength to those who have none, with the promise that we will never use it for conquest. The response was immediate. 12 species applied for membership within the first hour. By the end of the week, 56 species had joined what was being called the Concord. It was not universal. Some species preferred independence, but it was enough to reshape galactic politics. Admiral Daewon Kim stood in Earth's command center, watching the diplomatic maneuvering with satisfaction. Captain Hannah Park stood beside him, having been promoted to Admiral herself for her actions at Targus 4. Do you think it will work? She asked. Can we really build something better? I do not know, Daewon admitted. But we have to try. We showed the galaxy what humans can do in war. Now we must show them what we can do in peace. That will be the harder challenge. Dr. Sungmin Choi had a different task. Earth had developed weapons technology far beyond what the galaxy used. The question was what to do with that knowledge. Some wanted to keep it secret, maintaining Earth's military advantage. But In-Soo decided differently. We will share our defensive technology with Concord members, the Premier announced. Armor designs, point defense systems, sensor improvements. Everything that helps them protect themselves. But we will not share offensive weapons. Those remain our responsibility alone, and we will use them only when necessary. It was a delicate balance, giving allies the means to defend themselves while maintaining Earth's ability to enforce Concord principles. Not everyone agreed with the approach, but In-Soo held firm. Power must be balanced with responsibility. We will not create another arms race. Major Taeyang Song returned to Earth with his Special Forces teams. They received honors, medals, recognition for their crucial role in the war. But Taeyang himself seemed distant, haunted by the things he had seen in those prison camps. The war is over, Premier Insu told him in a private ceremony. Your service has been extraordinary. Take time to heal. Will there be other wars? Taeyang asked quietly. Probably, Insu admitted. The galaxy is a dangerous place. But now we are prepared, and now we have allies who will stand with us. Taeyang nodded slowly. He had done terrible things during the war, but necessary things. The faces of the people he had freed helped balance the memories of the people he had killed. It was not enough, but it was something. The Vrexian Empire was partitioned. Some systems were granted independence. Others joined the conquered. The Vrexian species itself was not punished collectively. Only those who had committed crimes faced justice. It was important to Insu that humanity did not become oppressors in their turn. We judged individuals, not species, he explained to Admiral Daewon. We held Shakrix accountable for her choices, not every Vrexian for existing. That distinction matters. On the Vrexian homeworld, a new government formed, one committed to peaceful coexistence. It was fragile, untested, but hopeful. Earth provided advisors to help with the transition, and slowly the wounds began to heal. Captain Yeonsu Park received a medal for her work disrupting Vrexian supply lines. Fleet Commander Bora Shin was celebrated for maintaining the blockade without firing a shot. Commander Jin Ho-yun became known as the Liberator for his work freeing the prison camps. Each had played their part in the victory, and each carried the weight of what victory had required. Ambassador Jiwoo Lee stood once more in the council chamber. But now it was the conquered assembly, and the atmosphere was completely different. Species listened when she spoke. They valued Earth's opinion. They sought humanity's guidance. It was everything she had wanted during those years of humiliation. But now that she had it, she understood the responsibility that came with respect. We must never forget how we got here, she told the assembly. We were weak and we were dismissed. We understand what it feels like to be powerless. That memory should guide everything we do. We must protect others who are weak, not because it benefits us, but because it is right. The Assembly approved funding for outreach programs, development aid for less advanced species, and educational exchanges. The Concord would be more than just a military alliance. It would be a community working toward something better. Dr. Sungmin Choi continued his weapons research, but now he also worked on civilian technology, medical advances, agricultural improvements, propulsion systems that could help distant colonies thrive. The same brilliance that had created weapons of war now served purposes of peace. This is what I always wanted, he told Admiral Daewon during a visit to the research facility. The weapons were necessary, but this is what I dreamed of creating. Daewon understood. He too had spent decades preparing for war while hoping it would never come. Now that the war was over, there was space to dream of better things. But he also knew that vigilance was necessary. Peace was fragile, and there would always be threats. 6 months after the war ended, a new species approached Earth for help. The Milik were a peaceful people facing aggression from a neighboring empire. They had heard about the conquered, about Earth's promise to protect those who could not protect themselves. They came asking if that promise was real. Admiral Daewon met with Premier Insuhan and Admiral Hana Park to discuss the request. This is the test, he said. Do we honor our commitments even when it is difficult? We must, Insu replied. If we fail the first species that comes to us for help, the Concord means nothing. But we do this carefully. We assess the situation, we exhaust diplomatic options, and we use force only as a last resort. Hana prepared a fleet for deployment, hoping they would not need to fight, but ready if they did. The galaxy watched to see if Earth's promises were genuine. It would have been easier to ignore the Milik's request, to focus on Earth's own interests. The warning siren screamed across Colony Sigma 7 at 4 in the morning. Corporal Kim Tae-sung rolled out of his bunk before his mind fully understood what was happening. His hands moved on instinct, grabbing his uniform and boots. Around him, other soldiers did the same. Nobody spoke. They all knew what the sirens meant. The Krell had found them. Tae-sung ran through the corridors of the military base, his heart pounding in his chest. The lights flickered red, then white, then red again. He could hear explosions in the distance, getting closer with each passing second. The colony's defensive shields were taking hits. Big ones. Communications center now, someone shouted. That was his post. Tae-sung pushed through the crowd of soldiers heading to their stations. He passed Lee Minna in the hallway. She was carrying medical supplies, her face pale but determined. They had grown up together on Earth before joining the military. She grabbed his arm as he ran past. "Stay alive, Tae-sung," she said. "You too," he replied, and then she was gone, running toward the medical bay. The communication center was chaos. Screens showed Krell warships dropping out of hyperspace by the dozens. Their ships were massive, shaped like curved blades, black metal that seemed to absorb light. The colony's defense fleet looked like toys next to them. Captain Park Ji-woo stood at the center of the room, barking orders into 3 different channels at once. "Get me a count," Park demanded. "How many ships?" 47 capital ships, someone answered. "Hundreds of fighters." "Sir, this is their entire armada." Tae-sung sat at his console and pulled up the defense grid. His fingers flew across the keyboard trying to coordinate communications between the scattered defense positions. The colony had 12,000 soldiers. The Krell had brought enough ships to carry 10 times that number. They were going to lose. Park Ji-woo seemed to read his mind. The captain moved to stand behind Tae-sung's chair, his hand heavy on the young corporal's shoulder. "I know what you're thinking," Park said quietly. "But we don't have the luxury of despair right now. Do your job." Tae-sung nodded and focused on his screens. He routed emergency channels, sent evacuation orders to civilian sectors, and tried to keep track of which defensive positions were still responding. Every few minutes, another position went dark. The Krell were cutting through their defenses like they were made of paper. The battle lasted 2 days, but it felt like 2 years. Tae-sung watched it all from the communications center. He saw the defense fleet torn apart in the first 6 hours. He listened to the desperate calls from soldiers on the front lines as Krell ground forces landed. He heard the screams when the eastern wall fell. He sent messages he knew would never be answered. Captain Park Ji-woo barely slept. He stayed at his post, coordinating the defense, pulling soldiers back from lost positions, trying to save as many lives as possible. But there was only so much he could do. The Krell had better weapons, better armor, and more soldiers. They had planned this attack for months, maybe years. Humanity had been caught completely by surprise. On the second day, Park pulled Tae-sung aside. The captain's face was covered in dust and dried blood from a wound on his forehead. His eyes were hollow with exhaustion. "I need you to do something for me," Park said. "Something important." "Anything, sir." Park handed him a data chip. "This contains everything we know about the Krell. Their tactics, their weapons, their language. Everything we've learned from fighting them. I need you to take it and hide." Tae-sung stared at him. "Sir?" "The bunker system beneath the colony. Level 9, Section 14. There's an old storage room there. It has independent power and life support. I need you to go there and seal yourself in." "I won't abandon my post," Tae-sung said. Park grabbed him by the shoulders. "This isn't about abandoning anything. If we all die here, everything we learned dies with us. Someone needs to survive. Someone needs to make sure Earth knows what happened here." His grip tightened. "I'm ordering you, Corporal. Go, now." Tae-sung wanted to argue, but he could see there was no point. Park Ji-woo had made up his mind. "What about you, sir?" "I'm going to buy you as much time as I can." Park managed a tired smile. "Besides, captains go down with their ships. It's tradition." They shook hands. Tae-sung wanted to say something meaningful, something that would matter, but his throat was too tight. Instead, he just nodded and turned to go. "Tae-sung," Park called after him. "Tell Earth we fought well." "I will, sir." The bunker system was a maze of tunnels and rooms built deep underground. It was designed to protect civilians during bombardment, but most of the civilians were already dead or captured. Tae-sung ran through empty corridors, the data chip clutched in his hand. Behind him, he could hear the battle raging. The Krell were inside the main complex now. He found the room Park had described. It was small, maybe 3 meters by 3 meters, filled with old equipment and supply crates. Tae-sung sealed the door and activated the independent systems. The room's lights came on, humming softly. He sat down on a crate and finally let himself breathe. Then the world above him exploded. The bunker shook so hard that Tae-sung was thrown to the floor. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling. The lights went out, then came back on, flickering weakly. He could hear massive impacts one after another like thunder that never stopped. The Krell were bombarding the colony from orbit. Tae-sung curled up in the corner and covered his head. There was nothing else he could do. He thought about Park Ji-woo, about Lee Min-ah, about all the soldiers fighting up above. He thought about his family back on Earth. He wondered if they would ever know what happened here. The bombardment lasted for hours. When it finally stopped, the silence was worse than the noise. Tae-sung waited 3 days before he tried to leave the room. He survived on emergency rations and water from the room's supply cache. He slept in short bursts, always waking to the sound of explosions that weren't there. On the 3rd day, he gathered his courage and unsealed the door. The bunker system was in ruins. Half the tunnels had collapsed. It took Tae-sung 6 hours to dig his way to the surface. When he finally emerged, he wished he hadn't. Colony Sigma-7 was gone. The buildings were rubble. The streets were craters. Bodies lay everywhere, human and Krell both. The sky was dark with smoke. In the distance, he could see Krell ships landing and taking off, carrying away everything of value. Tae-sung found the communications center, or what was left of it. The building had been hit directly. There were no survivors. He found Captain Park Ji-woo's body in the ruins, still at his post. Tae-sung knelt beside his mentor and gently closed the captain's eyes. "I'll tell them, sir," he whispered. "I'll tell them you fought well." He found Lee Min-ah in the medical bay. She had died defending her patients. Her hand still clutched a rifle. Tae-sung sat beside her for a long time, not speaking, just remembering the girl who had once climbed trees with him in the parks of Earth. That evening, as the sun set over the ruins, Tae-sung heard a broadcast. It was coming from every Krell speaker in the colony, transmitted across the entire galaxy. A voice spoke in perfect human language full of arrogance and triumph. "I am General Vexthor, Supreme Commander of the Krell Armada. The human military is destroyed. Your colonies are ours. Earth will fall within the month. Humanity is defeated. This war is over." Tae-sung stood in the ruins and listened to the broadcast. His hands clenched into fists. His jaw tightened. General Vexthor was wrong about one thing. The war wasn't over. Not yet.